Good morning from Cedar Creek Bottoms. Me and Rebecca was on a little road trip this morning. We're heading up to the community of Montford, Alabama, Bannister Tractor to purchase Rebecca, or really us, a little Massey Ferguson.
No, Rebecca.
Come on. You ain't gonna ride it all the time.
Big man on a little tractor syndrome.
Oh, yeah. We're going to go up to Montford, Alabama, which is right below Oxford, I-20, to a place called Bannister Tractor that sells Massey Ferguson and some other brands. They have a little bitty tractor. We're going to go purchase it this morning, see if it'll help us on our homestead with some of our chores, because me and Rebecca are getting older.
I'm not getting old.
Yeah, you are. But anyway, we're going to go do that, and then while we're up there, there's a place that has compost, and we don't have enough at home right now to do what we need to do with, so we're going to go over there and purchase a load of compost, just put it back in the truck, whatever we can get that the truck will allow. So come on with us with our journey today. Me and her decided we'd do this video as we drove up there, so this is going to be the fireside tales, and you're going to get to see some pretty country. We're waiting on this car coming to make sure which way it's going for a minute. They are turning, so that's good. Right now we're going through a little community called Oakdale, little farming community just north of us. So you get to see some fields, and here shortly you get to see a real pretty place. On this fireside tales, I decided I was going to do a couple from history. One that was told to me by my mother that involved the family, and it kind of goes in on my grandpa was actually the one that told my mother and some of her other siblings about this. He was a gristmiller, so I'm assuming he may have heard that story because he ground corn for a lot of people, so I'm figuring that's where that story came about. But back in the early 1900s, I'm figuring 1910s or maybe 20s, what my mother said, that there was a family that lived over in the mountains, which is now the hunting club that I hunt. Back in those days, there were a couple of people that lived up in there. Even my daddy showed me a couple of old home places up in there where some people used to live. In fact, one of the home places may be the place. I really got to thinking about that. It could be the place where that actually took place. I don't know, but won't never know. But anyway, the story went that day the husband was a logger by trade, and he left that morning to go wherever he was logging at. He left on his horse or mule and left for the day, leaving his wife and kids there at their property. Of course, they were going about their daily chores. The wife, and this must have probably been around lunchtime that day, was out hanging clothes, probably where she had done her washing during the day. and there's a ridge up behind their home, and she could hear something up on the ridge walking around, and so she got to kind of paying attention, looking, and she finally spied something up on top of the hill looking down at her, kind of in behind a tree. Well, it steps out, and as it steps out, it lets out this scream or roar. Of course, this terrifies the woman, and she recognizes this thing is not a human. It's full of hair. She calls her kids, tells them to get in the house. She runs in the house. She just has got in and shut the door. Back in those days, a lot of people kept a big plank that they could let down on their door on the inside.
Bar the door.
To bar the door. Well, about that time she had got that done, something hit the door real hard. And this thing, whatever it was, started going around beating on the house. Of course, her and the kids were terrified. She gets her husband's shotgun, loads it, and, you know, just in case this thing did break in. Well, this went on for, I don't know how long. My mother didn't really say how long it went on. But this thing's, you know, continuously beating on the house, trying to get in. Well, finally it gets quiet for a few minutes, and then they hear something on the roof. And realize that this thing has climbed up on the roof. Well, back in those days, people's fireplaces, they kept a fire in it most of the time, because that's where they done a lot of their cooking. So she starts grabbing wood, throwing it in on the hot coals to build smoke, because this thing was trying to get around the chimney area, so she was trying to, you know, keep it from coming in the house through the chimney. Well, this went on for a little while. This thing kept jumping off and on the house and all that. Well, finally, her husband is on the way home. He tops the hill and hears all the racket and sees this thing up on top of the roof. Well, he has his rifle with him, and he lines up and takes a shot and hits the creature. He knew he hit it because he could see the way, you know, the body acted. But this thing, of course, jumps off the roof, takes off running, and that's pretty much what happened. I don't, you know, Mother, that's all she knew. We don't know if the man tried to go trail it, finish it off, or what. But found out later on what might have really took place was they had killed or butchered some hogs a few days before that. Of course, when you put new meat in the smokehouse, it's going to put out a smell, and probably, which back then they saved everything on the hog. So, babe, show us some of that pretty scenery right here. They've been putting a bunch of rock over there. They're fixing to build something over there. Pretty neat looking. Let's say what in the world. Yeah, real pretty. That is Weoki Creek. Of course, that's the Indian name. But going back then, they pretty much saved everything on the hog. But of course, blood was probably spilt on the ground, so that blood smell was probably in the air too. So my thinking, which is only an opinion, because there's no facts here, that more likely that was probably a Bigfoot. He probably smelt the blood or the smokehouse, and he was probably what he was really after. And now why he acted the way he did, I have no idea. You figure he would have went to the smokehouse, tore the door off, and took off one of the hams. I don't know what would have persuaded him to go after the woman and kids, but that's something we'll never know. But anyway, that was an interesting story. And My mother, even after I started Bigfoot research in 2007, she didn't really tell me this story until just a few years ago. So I don't know why she held on to that, or she just thought about it. You know, it's hard to say. But anyway, that's pretty neat. So there's something from the 1910s or 20s that is very interesting. The other thing my mother brought up was when they were living up at the Cowmugga grist mill, my grandfather would work a lot of nights late in the grist mill, especially during the season of grinding corn and wheat and all that for all the farmers in the area. And sometimes it'd just be her and her siblings there, because a lot of times the boys would be down there at the mill with their father. And said one night there was something went to prowling around the house, and my grandmother had a sword that was a Civil War sword. I really have tried to find out more about that sword and where it exactly came from. But anyway, she had this sword, and whatever it was kept coming up toward one of the windows, and it done got them very nervous. Well, I think my grandma told whoever it was or whatever it was they needed to go on, and they didn't. Well, I guess my grandmother finally got a bait of it, and she just took that sword and jabbed it through the window, because back then they didn't have screens on windows and the window was up, so she just took a jab and she hit something. Of course, it let out a big groan and took off running, so we never know really what that was. That may have been a human that was prowling around, or it could have been something else. But never did hear about anybody in the community getting stabbed. so if they was, they kept it very, very quiet. But that never did pop up. So that's another story. That was probably in the early 40s, before they moved to Chillisburg. So just something that was really interesting, and something that shows a little history. But I'm gonna do this up for the day. Of course, I'll have another one pretty soon. We're gonna go down to Ocala, Florida, to see a friend of mine, and I'm hoping that he'll get on camera with us and maybe tell a few things that he's witnessed, and maybe we'll be able to come back with some filming from Ocala National Forest. So y'all stay tuned for that. If you like what we did today, like it, comment, subscribe, share it with other people. Me and Rebecca,
share your experiences in the comments.
Yeah. And or any questions, and I ain't no expert, I tell you that now, but I will try to answer stuff. Of course, it'll be in my opinion, because in the Bigfoot world, it's hard to have really good facts. But of course, me and Rebecca's channel is about homesteading mostly, and I'm hoping this year that me and her will be able to show a lot of different things we're going to be doing. We hope to show some old ways of doing some things. Me and her's got some ideas that we're going to do. And me and her's talked about, I may even start my own channel to handle the Bigfoot stuff, and let all our homestead stuff stay on the other one. But that's something we're still going to discuss. But anyway, I hope y'all have a good day.